Alright, so these are the solutions to the Algebra Semester 1 review, numbers 21 through 30. So on 21, you've got the word problem. The formula for Ohm's law is E equals I times R. And then they tell you what E represents, and then they also tell you what I and R represents. So right here it says E represents the voltage measured in volts. So anytime we see a number with volts, we're going to put it in the E. So if you read through all of this, we see that we've got 12 volts. So I've got E equals I times R, and we know that E represents the volts, amount of volts, so I'm going to put 12 where the E is. Okay, and then it says I represents the current measured in amps. So we look and we see right here we've got 0.25, so I'm going to put that in the R. I'm sorry, in the I. All right, now we're looking for R, which represents the resistance, and that's what it's asking us to find. What is the resistance here? So that is what we are looking for. So there's the equation already set up for you. So now all you have to do is solve that equation. So we're trying to get R all by itself. So in order to do that, we need to divide by 0.25 on both sides of the equal sign. And that would give you R equals 48. All right, so let's look at number 22. 22, they're telling us to solve for x. So we've got the equation 3xyz equals p. And we're trying to solve for x. So we want to get the x all by itself. So I see with the x, it's got the 3, the y, and the z. And all of those are being multiplied with the x. So we can get rid of all of those by dividing 3yz on both sides. So the 3's would cancel out, the y's would cancel out, the z's would cancel out, and we've got x equals p divided by 3yz. So therefore our answer is C. All right, 23 is very similar to what we just did in the previous problem. So we've got area, A equals 1/2 base times height. And guys, we've seen this one in our formative. We've seen this one in class. We've done this problem several times. So right here, we're trying to solve for B, so we're getting the B all by itself. So what we need to do first is get rid of the H. The H is multiplying, so we divide both sides by H. H's are gone, and that gives us area divided by H equals 1/2 times base. Now we need to get rid of the 1/2. And if you remember, to get rid of a fraction that's being multiplied, we multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1/2 is 2/1. So we do that on both sides. The 2/1 and the 1/2, those are going to cancel out. And that gives us B equals 2 times A is 2A, and 1 times H is H. So here is the answer to 23. Now let's look at 24A. We've got 2x minus 3 equals y. We need to get the x by itself, so we add 3 to both sides because it was subtracting. So we've got 2x equals y plus 3. Now to get rid of the 2, we do the inverse, which is divide. Oops, divide by 2 on both sides. And that gives us x equals y plus 3 all over 2. So that would be our answer for 24A. Now looking at 24B, we've got 2 plus 2x minus 1 equals 4y. So on this one, what we're going to do first is I'm going to go ahead. I see on the same side of the equal sign, I've got like terms I can combine. 2 minus 1 is a positive 1. So that gives me 2x plus 1 equals 4y. Now remember, we're trying to get the x all by itself. So I'm going to get rid of the 1 by subtracting. That gives us 2x equals 4y minus 1. Divide everything by 2, because the inverse of multiplying is dividing, and that gives us x equals 4y minus 1 all over, or all divided by 2. And that is your 24b. Now let's try 24c. We've got 2a plus 4x plus 3b equals 10. So once again, we have to get the x all by itself. So what we're going to do, subtract 2a from both sides, and we can go ahead and get rid of this get rid of the 3b by subtracting. None of these over on the right side of the equal sign, none of them are like terms. So that gives us 4x equals 10 minus 2a minus 3b. We can divide everything by 4 to get rid of that 4 that's being multiplied to the x. Those cancel out, and you get x equals 10 minus 2a minus 3b divided by 4. And that is your answer for 24C. Alright, so let's look at 25A. We're solving this equation. Notice that we've got absolute value. So remember, usually whenever you have absolute value signs, you will have two answers. So right here we've got 3 times the absolute value of 2x minus 1 plus 2 equals 17. Remember, you have to get the absolute value signs all by itself, and you never, ever, ever distribute into absolute value signs. So to get those absolute value signs by itself, I need to get rid of that plus 2 by subtracting 2. That gives me 3 times the absolute value of 2x minus 1 equals 15. Now get rid of that 3 by dividing by 3. And that gives me the absolute value of 2x minus 1 equals 5. Now we need to split it up into two equations. 2x minus 1 equals 5, or 2x minus 1 equals negative 5. And now we solve each one of those. So we add 1. That gives me 2x equals 6. Divide by 2. And x equals 3. The other one, we add 1 to both sides. 2x equals negative 4. Divide by 2. And x equals negative 2. So our solution here is, whoops, that's supposed to be a part of my braces there. So we would have 3 and negative 2. Yeah, the right one doesn't look any better. All right, let's look at 25b here. We've got the absolute value of x plus 7 equals negative 2. So like I said, usually you will have two solutions with absolute value. But notice here, the absolute value sign is already by itself, so there's nothing we need to get rid of. And then notice what it equals. Does absolute value ever equal a negative? It can't, because remember, absolute value is always positive because it's the distance the number is from 0. So since it cannot equal that negative, our answer here is no solution. All right, 26. So the first thing we need to do is get that absolute value sign all by itself. In order to do that, we're going to divide by that 2 that's being multiplied. Remember, never ever distribute into absolute value signs. So that gives us the absolute value of 6 minus 3x is equal to 15. Now that we've got the absolute value signs all by itself, we can see that it equals a positive number, and we're okay with that. Let's split it up into 2 equations. 6 minus 3x equals 15, and 6 minus 3x equals negative 15. So right here we subtract 6. Make sure we bring down a negative 3x equals 9. Divide by negative 3, and we get x equals negative 3. So we see here that it's definitely not going to be A, and it's definitely not going to be D. Let's go ahead and solve the second equation here. Subtract 6 on both sides. Bring down a negative 3x equals negative 21, and divide both sides by negative 3. And x equals 7. So now looking at this, we see that our correct answer is B, because the negative 3 has a dot on it and the 7 does also. Alright, 27a, we're solving the inequality. Negative 3x is less than 12. So we're trying to get the x all by itself, so we divide both sides by negative 3. Now remember, whenever you are multiplying or dividing an inequality by a negative, we need to flip that inequality sign. So instead of less than, it's going to become greater than, and then negative 4. So that means 27a, our answer is C. Looking at B, right here we've got 8x is greater than or equal to negative 160. Divide both of those sides by 8. This one is we're dividing by a positive number, so that inequality is going to stay as greater than or equal to. And then negative 160 divided by 8 is negative 20. So our answer here is B. And then the last one here, we've got negative 5x is greater than negative 10. Divide both sides by negative 5. Remember, because we're dividing by a negative, that sign flips, and we get x is less than 2. So our answer here would be B. All right, letter D, we still have several more on this problem. So we are solving for x, so we've got 7 minus 3x is greater than or equal to 40. We're going to subtract the 7 on both sides. Those cancel out. We get negative 3x is greater than or equal to 33. Divide by negative 3. Because I'm dividing by a negative number, the inequality sign flips, and we get x is less than or equal to negative 11. So there's the answer for D. E, we've got 5x plus 3x is greater than negative 8. So we combine our like terms. So 5x plus 3x, remember we do what it says, that gives us 8x is greater than negative 8. Divide by 8 on both sides, and x is greater than negative 1. There's your answer for letter E. And then looking at letter F, we've got 8x minus 3 times 2x minus 4 is greater than or equal to x minus 9. First thing we need to do here is distribute, and notice the number in front of parentheses, that's a negative 3. Not going to do anything with the 8x yet, so I just bring it down. Negative 3 times 2x is a negative 6x, so I write minus 6x. Negative 3 times negative 4 gives me a positive 12, so I put plus 12. And then bring everything else down. Now also notice we've got like terms here, so we're going to combine those together. Remember, do what it says. 8x minus 6x, that gives us 2x. Bring down to plus 12 is greater than or equal to x minus 9. Move the variables over to the left side. So that means in order to get this x over to the left side, I need to subtract x on both sides. Those are going to cancel out. 2x minus x gives me an x. Bring down to plus 12 is greater than or equal to. Notice that that is a negative 9. Don't lose your negative. Now we're going to subtract 12 on both sides. Those cancel out, and x is greater than or equal to negative 21. And there's your answer for letter F. All right, moving on to the next problem. 28. So right here, we're going to solve that inequality and then see which graph that represents. So I've got negative 4x plus 8 is greater than 12. Subtract the 8 on both sides. Those cancel out. That gives you negative 4x is greater than 4. Divide by negative 4. Remember, whenever we're dividing or multiplying by a negative number, the sign flips. So instead of greater than, now we've got less than negative 1. So what this means is on negative 1, we need to have an open circle, which looking at our choices, all of them have open circles, but this is on 1. A has it on 1, and D has it on 1. And then remember, the sign, whenever the variable is in front, this sign shows which way you're pointing, and the sign is pointing to the left. All the numbers to the left of negative 1 are less than, so that means C is our correct answer. All right, on this one, 28b, we've got 3x minus 10 is less than or equal to 5x minus 12. Move the variables over to the left side, so we subtract 5x. Those cancel out. That gives you negative 2x minus 10 is less than or equal to, notice because that's a minus 12, I write negative 12. Add 10 to both sides. Those cancel out. That gives us negative 2x is less than or equal to negative 12 plus 10 gives us negative 2. Divide by a negative 2. Remember, because we're dividing by a negative, our inequality sign flips, and negative 2 divided by negative 2 is a positive 1. So notice on our choices, C and D have a negative 1. And remember, when the variable is in the front, the inequality sign points to the direction of where we shade, and this gets a closed circle, and shading to the right, so our answer here is A. Letter C, we've got negative n is less than 2. So remember, we don't want a negative in front of the n, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. Those cancel out, and remember, because we're dividing by a negative, our inequality sign flips, and we get negative 2. And then we've got or 2n minus 3 is greater than 5. So we add 3 to both sides, and we get 2n is greater than 8. Divide by 2, and we get n is greater than 4. So notice here we want n is greater than negative 2 or greater than 4. All right, so looking at that, the only one, so on our, if we were to make a number line, we would have negative 2, open circle, and notice which way it's shading. It's shading to the right, so we'd want to go to the right. And then over here we would have a 4, open circle, and this one would also be shaded to the right. So the only graph that meets this, and remember for the or, only one of the shading has to occur. It's not both of them. It's not like and. So that means the only one that looks like this would be C. All right. 29, match the statement with the inequality. So right here we know that more than, for more than. More than means to add, and it's also one of our flip-flop words. So that means the 4 goes in the back, and the product of 5 goes in front. So, I'm sorry, the product of 5 and x goes in front. So we've got 5x plus 4, and then let's keep reading. It says is greater than, so we're going to use the greater than sign, 20. So let's match that, and that one would be 2. Next one, the product of a number and x, I'm sorry, the product of a number x and 5, so what that means is 5x decreased by 4, and then is less than. Because it says is less than, that tells me that we're using the inequality sign and not the subtraction. If it says is less than. If it just says less than, then you use subtraction. So this one is just the inequality sign, 20. So that one right there would be 4. And then the product of a number x and 5, so that would be 5x, increased by 4, so plus 4, is less than 20. And that one right there would be 3. So 2, 4, 3. Solve each inequality and graph the solution set. So right here, let's look at our inequality sign. Right here we have the greater than sign, so that means that this is an OR problem. Greater is an OR. So remember, we need to, anytime it has absolute value signs, we need to create 2 inequalities. So this would be 2x minus 3 is greater than 1, or 2x minus 3. Flip the inequality sign and do the negative, or the opposite. So we add 3 to both sides. That gives me 2x is greater than 4. Divide by 2. And x is greater than 2. The other one, we add 3 to both sides. We get 2x is less than 2. Divide by 2. And we get x is less than 1. So on our number line on 2, we put an open circle. And it says x is greater than 2, so we shade that way. And then on 1, we put an open circle, and it says it's less than. And we shade the opposite direction. So there is our graph for that one. All right, letter B. Now, remember, whenever it's all bunched up like this, this is an AND problem. So let's go ahead and start solving this. We want to get that x in the middle all by itself, so we need to subtract 4 on all 3 sides. So those cancel out. We get negative 6 is less than or equal to 3x is less than or equal to 3. Now get rid of the 3 by dividing everything by 3. And we get negative 2 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 1. And what that means is everything in between negative 2 and 1 is what's shaded. So we go to negative 2, do a closed circle, and we go to 1, do a closed circle. And like I said, everything in between is going to be shaded. Letter C, we've got absolute value signs again. So remember, we need to create 2 inequalities. This one says less than, so that means less than is an AND. So I've got x plus 10 is less than negative 2, and x plus 10. Flip that inequality sign and change it to its opposite, positive 2. Subtract 10 on both sides. Those cancel out, and x is less than negative 12. Subtract 10 on both sides. Those cancel out, and x is greater than negative 8. All right, so now on negative 12, negative 12 would be over here. We'd have an open circle and shading to the left. Negative 8 is over here, open circle and shading to the right. Now remember, with an AND, It's where both of the shadings are. Do I have any common shaded area for this one? No. Or another way that you can look at this is this a way an and problem should look? No. So because of those two reasons, that our and problems do not look like this, and there's no common shaded area for this one, our answer is no solution. You might be able to tell that by looking at the problem, because remember, absolute value is never going to be less than a negative number. Now, if that was a greater than sign right here, we would have to keep working out the problem. But because that was a less than, it's not going to happen. All right, looking at this problem, we need to solve for c on both of those. So let's go ahead and add 4 to both sides. That gives us 2c is greater than negative 2. Divide by 2. And we get c is greater than negative 1. On the next one, we subtract 1 on both sides, and we get 3c is less than 12. Divide by 3, and we get c is less than 4. So on 4, we would have an open circle. On 1, we would have an open circle. Negative 1, we would shade to the right. 4, we would shade to the left. And remember, this is where both of the shadings are, or it's going to be in between those two numbers. And so that's what our answer would look like. All right, that's it for 21 through 30. If you have any other questions on this, please come and see me. Thank you.